All right. Hey, everyone. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. Can I just get a message to say that you can hear me and see me? Okay, good. All right, guys, we'll be starting in 1 minute, just waiting for everybody to get in. Okay, so why don't we, while we're waiting another minute, why don't you guys start telling me whether you are already Bitcoin owners or not, and I'll be back in a second. Otherwise, I'm gonna plug it in. Okay, cool. All right, let's get started. So thanks for joining me, everyone. I'm sure you can hear me because everyone's saying, yes, we're in. All right, you guys can hear me. Okay, cool. So this is gonna be a very, very quick, short, direct webinar. If you have any questions, please start typing them in so I can get to them as we move through this. And the reason why it's going to be quick and tight is because in 30 minutes, I've got to get on to the SPFL Accelerator webinar. So we're probably going to close at about 2:29 and then get on board with the SPFL Accelerator. So what you're looking at in front of you here is the chart for Bitcoin. A lot of people are very excited about this, and I can understand why. It is very exciting, but this is just the starting ground. Bitcoin hasn't even started going up yet. It is going to, the time that Bitcoin starts moving into overdrive is once it breaks the previous all-time high. It did that last time as well. So once it breaks the previous all-time high, that's when we're officially in a quote unquote bull market. So this is literally just catch up. And I think based on what's happened over this weekend, we should be starting to see Bitcoin breach that all-time high at some point this week, unless there is a shock to the market. But that's what I really want to talk about. Because what I said on Friday, and I think I was slightly wrong on it, was that we should be seeing a pullback of around 20 to 30% in Bitcoin prices near the all-time high. I thought, which is what happened last time, that it was going to come before we breach the all-time high, right? So what I thought would have happened was it gets to about 20,000 and then collapses by 20 to 30%, and then by the end of the year continues up and breaks the all-time high. My thinking around that is changing over this weekend with the amount of research that I've been doing. And obviously, as you guys know, for me as an investor, Bitcoin is not, a end of the world, or rather, a new beginning of a new world investment. It is an opportunity to make a lot of money in a very, very short period of time. And that's because there's multiple facets to Bitcoin for me. It's not just about being a gold 2.0. That's of course important, and it's and now we've got institutions like BlackRock even coming out and saying that. The reason for me why it's important, the multifaceted game of Bitcoin, is that because of the fixed 21 million supply, and remember, not even gold has a fixed supply because they can keep digging it out of the ground, right? So gold inflates at about 2% a year. But because of the fixed supply of Bitcoin and the controlled release of Bitcoin because of the algorithms and the technology behind it, it's also a new asset class emerging. So it would be fair to say that Bitcoin, for example, there's a couple of arguments out there saying we might enter a deflationary period and et cetera, et cetera. Those arguments are right if Bitcoin was a mature asset class, but Bitcoin is not a mature asset class, right? It's got about a $320 billion market cap. That's it. Gold has a $12 trillion market cap. So the thinking for me is, even if $1 trillion moves out of gold, right? Considering art, for example, is a $17 trillion market cap. Real estate is a $250 trillion market cap, right? So if $1 trillion finds its way out of those assets into Bitcoin, regardless of what happens, because of the fixed supply, whether we get inflation this year or in 15 years' time, the price of Bitcoin is going to go up, right? And so for me, the game is multifaceted, which is why it's important to be in it right now, and important to be really focused on growing your position and making sure your position is growing every single week, every single month, because the pullbacks, yes, they're going to come. When will they come? I don't know, but they're going to come. But the timing is hard, especially now. So just so everyone understands, my valuation model of Bitcoin is based on stock to flow. And this is really the point at which earlier on in the year that things started making sense to me as far as Bitcoin go. I had a low Bitcoin IQ for 4 years, 5 years. And then this January, over the Christmas period and into the lockdown, et cetera, into Feb, March, my Bitcoin IQ went through the roof because I finally understood how to value the thing rather than trying to speculate with it. So stock to flow is the measure between the new flow of Bitcoin versus the stock that's already on ground, right? This is how actually we measure gold and silver values. So the future values of gold and silver are measured based on their stock to flow ratios. And throughout history, the hardest asset, i.e. the one with the highest stock to flow ratio, which means that it's going to take X number of years to dig up out of the ground the flow of how much stock there is on Earth. So for gold, it's about 50 to 62 years, depending on what's going on with the supply. Well, Bitcoin is now matching gold, right? And in the next halving, it doubles. So it goes to 120 years. So in essence, it becomes the hardest asset on Earth next in 2024. But what's happened is throughout history, value always chases the hardest asset. So that's what's going on with Bitcoin right now. And if we zoom into this period, which is the period that we're in right now, the price of Bitcoin when we were buying was, let's say, the price of Bitcoin was around this level when we were buying, and the price was sort of going up and down around the light blue line, right? So the light blue line is the stock to flow, current stock to flow, and the purple line is sort of what we're aiming towards. Okay, so in essence, what happens with the price is that it goes up, it goes past the stock to flow when the demand is too high, and then it eases off and then comes down and goes below the stock to flow as the price eases off, right? And it sort of manages that. And this analysis actually has a 92 point something percent correlation throughout the history of Bitcoin. This is a new analysis. A guy figured out, hey, maybe Bitcoin is like gold. Maybe we need to value it like gold, and created the analysis for it. So as you can see, what's happening yesterday, Bitcoin's price was 18,430 and the stock to flow value is 20,638 based on this initial stock to flow valuation, right? He's since updated that stock to flow valuation. And this is how I basically said at the beginning of, midway through the year, that we will breach 20,000 by the end of the year, because based on the stock to flow valuation of it, right? Unfortunately, I didn't look inside any crystal balls for that, okay? So that is what the premise is of this. Now, the transition that Bitcoin is making is it's moving from so the last cycle of Bitcoin, which is the 2017 cycle, the hype cycle, was driven by retail consumers like me and you, where we were getting in, well, not me, because I missed that one, but People were getting in thinking this is going to be amazing, and it obviously shot the price up. And that was one thing. Now we got institutions getting in, right? So let's look at this tweet and this this guy who actually sold his company for Bitcoin many years ago. He's a Bitcoin analyst now, and he's basically put out this tweet on the 21st of November saying these are the institutions and trading legends, right, that recognize Bitcoin is gold 2.0. Bear in mind, none of these people thought this at the beginning of this year. Right? I want you to understand how important that is. And that's why I want you to really pay attention to how fast this thing can move. Fidelity, JP Morgan, Bloomberg, Deutsche Bank, Citibank, Jefferies, BlackRock. I don't even know how to pronounce that next one. Jump Trading, Paul Tudor Jones. If no one's ever heard of Paul Tudor Jones, he's got better returns than Warren Buffett and Ray Dalio. He just doesn't shout about it. And Stanley Druckenmiller, right? All of these people in this year have become Bitcoin fanatics. JP Morgan recently upped their price target from $50,000. By the way, Jamie Dimon was saying a few years ago, if I catch any one of my traders buying Bitcoin, I'll fire them, right? That's how fast JP Morgan has moved. So JP Morgan's gone from a price target of $50,000 to this weekend saying, no, we were wrong. It's going to be $140,000, right? So there is a lot of attention coming, and this attention is institutional. And that's the key point. This is institutional attention that is coming. This is not, this is not retail money anymore. And the difference between institutions and retail money is when you and I get into Bitcoin, hey, we're going to buy some Bitcoin. It goes up to 100,000. Great. I'm going to sell it and buy a, I don't know, buy a boat or buy a Mercedes or whatever, right? Buy a Ferrari, whatever it is. That's typically the retail money's desire behind it, buying assets. Institutional money, they're buying it to lock it away. So the Bitcoins that all of these people are buying are going to be locked away, and no one's going to see them for 15 to 20 years, right? They're not going to be trading Bitcoin, basically. So they're sucking up all of this supply. And that's why the stock to flow model is working, right? Because the supply of Bitcoin is coming down every 4 years, and there's more and more demand every 4 years as well, because the narrative of Bitcoin changes every 4 years. So that's why this is working. That's why the stock to flow ratio works. That's why this is accurate, right? Now, the difference is it's transitioning from Bitcoin in its last stage, which was more of a speculative sort of asset, to now gold 2.0. And for that, this guy, the analyst that created this model, also created the cross asset model, where he took Bitcoin, compared it to gold, silver, real estate, and created a new model for it. And it still has the same accuracy level, except this model says that the price, according to the stock to flow ratio today, should be $34,500 per coin. So we've got a little bit of jump to do. So what's happening right now is we're phase transitioning Bitcoin from a speculative asset to gold 2.0, right? And basically the price valuation is moving between this model, which is the old model, and this model. And we don't know which one's going to win, right? One of these is going to win. We don't know which one's going to win. I'm predicting, based on the institutional demand that's coming in now, that the new cross asset model is going to be the one that wins, because institutions are looking at this as gold 2.0. On top of that, I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, but Square has been allowing people through their Cash app to buy Bitcoin. Now you've also got PayPal that came in last week. Now, PayPal is another tweet on some of the data on PayPal. PayPal, just in the USA, right? Just in the USA, is seeing $20 to $25 million of Bitcoin buying per day, right? Now, that is the entire day's supply of new Bitcoin just for PayPal. Just for PayPal. Combine that with all these institutions that are buying for their hedge funds and all these amazing traders. Paul Tudor Jones has got, he's put $2 billion into Bitcoin, right? Combine that with that demand and institutional demand, combine that with PayPal's demand, combine that with Cash App's demand, and the supply of Bitcoin is looking shorter and shorter every single day. And by the way, that PayPal news is only PayPal USA. That's not PayPal UK. That's not PayPal Asia. That's just PayPal USA. And next week or the week after, the biggest bank in Singapore, DBS, is about to start allowing people to invest in Bitcoin through their banking platform. On top of all of that, the US is now approving approving banks to start holding custody of crypto. So what's going to be next, right? So all of this money, institutional money, corporate money, because now we got MicroStrategy that put, 500, they made MicroStrategy put $425 million of their balance sheet into Bitcoin, of their treasury into Bitcoin. And within 3 months, they made more money on their Bitcoin treasury going up than in the last 3 years of their business. Right? So more and more companies are going to start doing it. There's going to be all of this demand chasing this finite supply of Bitcoin. And this is why the price is going up, which is why we are transitioning from this model to the next model. Let me see what's going on here. Wait a second. All right, there we go. That's why we're transitioning from that model to this one, which is the newer model. So what do these models say? Well, this original model says that by August 2021, we should see a price of $102,000 per coin, right? This new model says that by that same period, we should see a price of $243,000 per coin. Now, what's interesting is that the last time this happened, i.e. the last time we had this cycle in 2017, which is just here, what actually happened, one second, bear with me just a second. What actually happened was that even though the stock to flow valuation should have been somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000, the price went up to $19,000. Why? Because that extra demand shoots the price, and it overshoots it. In this case, by 3 times. Which means that if this new model is right and the top line price is $250,000 a coin, if the same thing happens, which has happened every single time where it's overshot it in the end, and if it just repeats the overshoot that we did last time, you're looking at $750,000 to $950,000 per Bitcoin before it crashes down and corrects to the $250,000 level. Or in this scenario, if the old one plays out, then you're looking at $300,000 to $350,000 a coin before it crashes back down to the $100,000 level. And then for the next 4 years, it will sway around that until the next halving comes along. And then this model predicts a price of $1.2 million or $1.3 million rather per Bitcoin. This is why it's important for everyone to be invested in it. And also the point of this webinar is when I said that a pullback will happen. Yes, a pullback will happen, but as we saw, zoom in on the 4-hour chart right here, as we saw, there was a pullback yesterday. And now what we're going to see is Bitcoin's transitioning from a 24-hour investment to a 5-day-a-week investment because of the institutions. Institutions don't trade on the weekends. So only the bear markets in Bitcoin will happen on the weekend. And as soon as the weekdays start, the price will start pumping again because the institutions are buying on the weekdays. So we saw the crash that happened yesterday. Suddenly the futures market opened and there we go. The price started taking off. That's because the institutions, that's when they buy. So we're not going to see, potentially these corrections will not be long-lived. That's the point. So will we see a correction? Yes, absolutely. When do I think it will happen? Well, I think it will happen around $25,000 because this chart pattern, and we don't really talk about technical analysis, but it's entertaining to look at. This chart pattern tells me that we're looking at a correction around $25,000, which is way beyond this level. So if you are thinking of buying, you need to get in. It's just simple as that. It's not worth trying to time this thing. I'm not trying to time this thing. I don't think anyone should try and time this thing. It is too volatile to time. Do not do it. Right. That's really the message that I want to give. This is transitioning from a retail speculative asset to an institutional asset, and institutions don't care about, the next 6 months. They're not trying to buy a boat or a Mercedes or a Ferrari with their Bitcoin. They're not trying to go on holiday because they had good 1-year investments, right? They're trying to buy for the next 20 years. That's the problem that everyone has. And if we're not, me and you, we're not savvy to that, we are going to we're going to miss out. We're going to be wake up and Bitcoin's going to be 19,000. It's going to be 25,000, right? And that volatility is hard to catch. And the only reason that's happening is because of the short supply, right? It's much more different to anything else that we've ever dealt with. Because remember, even with stocks, I can issue more shares, right? With real estate, I can build more houses. With gold, more gold is coming out of the ground, right? And now the Bitcoin that's being bought up, it's not going to see the light of day for a while. So that's really my message that I want to give. Are there any questions that anybody has? Because we've got about 12 minutes left. So we can get into any questions that anyone has regarding this. But I wanted to emphasize that if you are thinking of buying, buy it, right? Obviously, that's not advice and everything else. But if you are thinking of buying, don't try and time it anymore. Steve said, are you investing in any altcoins or Ethereum? No, I'm not. Marilyn said, is GBTC still a good option? Yes, GBTC is a good option. I use GBTC. James said, why would the Bitcoin price go down? What would cause the price to move down? It's very simple. Once the demand suddenly, there's a big shock of demand goes away because everyone's appetite is taken care of, we need time before the next wave of demand comes in. So that would cause the price to suddenly collapse by 20 or 30%. But I think with the institutional demand that's coming in now, it would be that collapse would be bought up very, very quickly. Terry said, if Bitcoin hits $100,000, where should we expect GBTC? I have no idea. And the reason for that is there's always a slight premium when you're trading with GBTC. So I have no idea. But, I would say 5x from here, but there will always be a premium. Marilyn said, would you shift any allocations from GLD to this? Well, my conservative portfolio is 10% in Bitcoin. I can't make a judgment on what you think you should do. Debbie and Steve said, yes, we almost have a whole Bitcoin. We also have several other crypto that are doing very well. Cool. Robert said, own GBTC and HVBT, which is Hive, on your advice. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. There's a lot of people here saying that they own Bitcoin. Steve said he owns Bitcoin but wants to buy more. I think you should get onto it. Terry said, will you shed some light on getting into other MicroStrategy trades? Yeah, we're going to do that on the SPFL Accelerator. Bitcoin. Brian said, when it starts down, will you sell some and buy again at the low price? I don't know, but I definitely do know one thing, that I'm not selling until next year, until we hit this, until the stock to flow chart sort of tells me that it might be a point at which it's reached its max valuation. I'm not selling. And I might sell at, say, 150,000. It continues up to 300,000. I look like an idiot for 2 months, and then it comes collapsing back down. So I don't know. We're going to see. And in this scenario, I look even more stupid, right? Because I'll sell at 300,000. It'll go to 750,000, then come collapsing down. And I'll be kicking myself harder than anyone else, by the way. But again, the timing of it is very tough. Patricia said, okay to just leave in a Coinbase wallet. Yeah, as long as if you're happy with that, that's absolutely fine. I use Coinbase a little bit too. Robert said, you just said 10% Bitcoin in your conservative portfolio. Does that imply you have a non-conservative portfolio in addition? I've always said I have my speculative portfolio that I just screw around with, basically, but I don't take that seriously, and it's not something that I would talk about, because it's literally, I don't mind if I lose 100% of that portfolio. Terry said, will you update us on the stock to flow chart from time to time? Of course, yeah. Anyone who's obviously watching, and I'll be letting people know when I'm looking at selling, if I'm going to look at selling. Steve said, do you transfer your Bitcoin to a cold wallet offline? There's different security things that people can do. It just depends what you're comfortable with. Actually, Coinbase, my parents, I convinced them to sell, they had some physical gold. I convinced them to sell their physical gold and put it into Bitcoin earlier on in the summer. at the, I think, April time, and they've made more money on their Bitcoin in the last, 5-6 months than gold in the last 6 years. So that's interesting too, right? But it just depends what you're comfortable with. Yeah, I mean, Coinbase has some very good security features. They've now got a vault feature, which means that you can set it up so that you got to confirm that you want to move the Bitcoin from 2 different email addresses or somebody else's email address before it moves. So, there's a lot of good security features out now. Okay, right. So I'll give it a couple more minutes if there's any more questions on this, but I think I've answered every single one. We'll see. Yeah. So basically, if you are looking at getting into Bitcoin more, do not wait for a pullback, because the pullbacks are being bought up so fast. For example, right, we saw a pullback on a Sunday, right? Most of you would not be able to execute a position on a Sunday, no matter where you are in the world. So don't wait for that. If you are looking to get in, and if you get in a little bit higher, it's not going to, whether you get in at 18,000 or whether you get in at 13,000, it's not going to make a difference at 250,000. I think that's just being anal. I've seen so many people in life miss out on opportunities simply because they were waiting for that extra 1%. Joe said, based on the patterns, when will Bitcoin peak? Well, this suggests that we're looking at peak somewhere by the end of 2021. And then, by the way, it depends what you want to do. Some of you will make, and I know this is going to happen, there'll be some of you that make so much money with Bitcoin, you'll spend, 2022 basically enjoying life and then considering investing again in 2023. I know that's going to happen, right? And I've done it myself when I first started. But there'll be some of you that say, okay, what's next? Well, here's the game plan. Once it peaks, the idea is to take profits and then divert those profits into the other investments for the next 3 years. And then just when time gets right, get back into Bitcoin just before or during 2024 at some point. So for me, Bitcoin is not a buy, hold, and absolutely forget for the rest of your life. It's sort of like there is a wealth cycle happening. I want to take advantage of it. So Bitcoin's going to go up. I'm going to close it out. Let's say you bought 1 Bitcoin. It now grows from, where we are now, 20,000 to, let's just say 20,000 to 250,000. You want to take that 250,000 and you want to turn it into, I don't know, 500,000 to $1 million within the next 3 years after that. Say you're on the SPFL accelerator doing Top Gun trades. And then in 2024, you want to get back in, with a portion back into Bitcoin and then ride the next wave up. That's pretty much the plan. And we'll see what happens and whether the next wave is going to come or whether this institutional demand, how powerful it is. Remember, all models are wrong. Some are useful. So this one's pretty useful. Debbie and Steve said, very good, man. Thank you for doing this extra meeting. Appreciate your time and concern. We'll be buying more. Cool. Patricia said, thank you for sharing. You're very welcome. Robert said, to me, it seems that putting a very tight security measures on one's Bitcoin position might ultimately make it difficult for people to access their own Bitcoin. That would further decrease active supply. That's the point. That's the point. So when you are looking to sell it via, for example, Coinbase, or say you moved it offline or whatever, you got to go through a period of transferring that to an exchange, right? So this is why the stock market's more volatile than real estate, right? Because you can sit there in front of your screen, press a button, and you're in and out of positions. Whereas with real estate, you got to find buyers, you got to get valuations, you got to get mortgages, this, that, and the other. There's also all these barriers to exit. So yes, by putting it offline and holding it away, just like what all the other institutions are going to do, that's what's going to happen. Basically, it's going to make it hard. Anonymous attendee said, love you guys. Thank you, Mesh. You're very welcome. Love you too. Right. Okay, guys, I think that's it. Aaron said, thanks, Mesh. This was great. Awesome. So, if you want to watch the replay of this, it'll be posted in the Telegram group. Other than that, the point I really want to drive home, and I've got 1 minute to drive it home. if you are looking to get into it, stop trying to time it because it's just not worth it. I know everyone's very excited about this price point, but we haven't even started yet. This is just catching up to the previous all-time high. Once we break that, that's when it's going to go nuts. So once you see it break the all-time high, that's when things are going to go crazy. Up until then, you got a perfect opportunity to buy it. Right, guys, I'm going to get on to the SPFL accelerator. Thank you so much for joining me last minute. I'll put the replay into the Telegram group as soon as Ali will do that as soon as it's done. Take care, everyone, and I'll speak to you guys very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.